Good morning. How are you today? Well, it's a cool 80 degrees here, although it feels like more than that. But I can't complain given what guys and gals are suffering in the Pacific Northwest. Be careful. In New York today, the prosecutors, both the DA's office and the Attorney General's office, are waiting to hear what the Trump Organization lawyers have to say to stop the prosecution of the Trump Organization and perhaps the chief financial officer, Weisselberg. It still strikes me as too little if the case is only about fringe benefits that weren't taxed and then by the CFO, therefore at some distance from Trump. Why isn't this case about Trump? In fact, you don't have to listen to me. Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, says they have the papers, they have the people that they can prove it with. They should be going forward, and I agree. No guts, no glory. And I wonder what the new DA is going to do with this, because when he takes over in January, will statutes of limitations have run? Will opportunities be foreclosed? But we can hope. We will find out this week what the current crop of prosecutors is doing, the so-called dream team of prosecutors, and then we can opine more accurately about their failures or successes. In addition, on the Hill, we have what I've described as the soap opera about internal repairs, infrastructure recreated, and going forward with that way. There are so many differences on that. They may all get together and sing Kumbaya, but we'll have to look at the details. That is to say, is a single wealthy person taxed in order to pay for it? Are we being taxed by regressive taxes on gas and fuel? What about the environmental concerns which are at the heart of our infrastructure? These are the kinds of questions that maybe politicians hate because they're pointed and they try to emphasize. They can't help themselves. Those aspects they think will have us buy in. You know, don't you want that bridge fixed? Don't you want that road repaired? Yeah, of course. But what else are you going to do with our tax money? And aren't there other problems? My theme, as you know, if you listen to it in my podcast, was we have to do a triage and focus on the things that matter, like voting, like equality before the law. We have the situation in which Barr has written a book and he divorces himself from Trump in the sense of saying the election was right and just. Maybe just is too strong, but what he's done is he's won for himself criticism of he whose name we'd rather not say, but often must with more frequency. And perhaps he's watched what's happened to Rudy Giuliani, and he's thinking, you know, maybe I should do some things that would stave off finding myself in the same box. Well, it's hard to say between Barr and Rudy who's the worst. I think they're pretty equally engaged. And you might say because Barr was in the position of being our chief law enforcement officer, he failed worse because he actually raised his hand and swore duty and obligation to do things that he didn't do. That he was no more than a mouthpiece, a consigliere for a corrupt president. So those are kind of the things that we're watching. I want to hear why in Florida a whole building could collapse. I know part of the answer. There are probably no standards down there. And we see this in warm weather locales. Beautiful looking building that has problems. They don't usually collapse like this. But, you know, we're not paying attention to the changing weather. And even if there had been standards, which were ignored, and we have the testimony of an architect to that effect, we have to monitor the situation. Would you live anywhere in that building? I don't think anybody can live anywhere in that building. I assume they're all out of there. And, you know, we have 150 people unaccounted for so many days later. And I'd like to believe that there's some pocket of air somewhere that without food or drink, they've been able to survive. And maybe some have. But you see the layers of it. How do you dig down through that in time to save or find anyone? I have to assume that they have experts from 9/11 who had to deal with this. And I assume that somebody is paying attention to what the dust can do to the first responders who are trying to save people if they can find them, or at least reunite families with their deceased relatives. So, how are we this Monday? Well, it's become a mixed debate. And now that he whose name we'd rather not talk about has reared his head, I'm hoping that the Democrats will wake up and see that they need to start thinking about the issues and why they're there and fight on that basis rather than calculate what they can get away with. So, have a good day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.